Hello and welcome to this tutorial from learnwithvisionarydesign.com. This is part 2 of a 3-part tutorial on how to create the 3D animation you just saw in After Effects. In part 1, we created the basic 2D shapes, so if you're wondering how we got here, go ahead and check out part 1. In this part, we will turn our 2D layers into 3D extruded layers and add lighting and shadows to them. Part 3 will be for animating our 3D model. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel to be notified as soon as the 3rd part comes out. Now let's get started. In this 2nd part of the tutorial, you are going to learn how to turn these 2D shapes into a 3D design. To keep this composition unchanged, let's duplicate it by selecting the composition from the project window, press Ctrl D, and let's name it 3D. Open our new composition and we are going to select these layers, check the 3D icon right here. This will turn our objects into 3D objects. You are going to need to go to this renderer. You may have the option Classic 3D selected. Just click on it and from this drop-down menu, select Raytraced 3D. The Raytraced 3D renderer has several limitations which make After Effects a little bit limited in the 3D creation, but it can do some pretty beautiful work. Some of these limitations you can see here in the disable menu. Blending modes, track mattes, layer styles, all of these can't be applied on Raytraced 3D layers. Effects also cannot be applied. So it's really limited, but as I said before, you can create good stuff using this method. You also need good specifications in your computer. Let's press OK and start creating. Now, to help us have a better 3D vision of this shape, of this composition, we're going to need a camera. So we'll right click on an empty space, new, and select camera. Let's keep this information as its default. What we need to do is use the camera tool. By pressing C, we access the camera tool and we can move it like this to have a 3D view of our shapes. However, you want this initial perspective of the camera to stay intact, so you can always come back to it to see your shapes it's like from in front of the shapes you can see them. So we go to the position property of the camera and set a keyframe. This is the default position. Go to the 1st second and now you can move the camera as you like to have a full perspective. And you can see that when you go back to the 1st keyframe, you have your camera position, your original camera position intact. Let's now delete this keyframe and start creating. Now we said that these are clearly not 3D shapes. So what we're going to do is give each layer a specific extrusion depth and a specific position in the Z-axis, which is in this direction. Now I have previously done this before, so I have calculated the Z-axis position of each layer based on the extrusion depth of each one. I'm going to enter the data right now, but I'm going to explain later why I chose each number. So let's first change the position. Let's go to the gray square, or better, select all layers and press P on our keyboard. This way all position properties of all layers will appear. The position of the gray square, the X and Y positions are not changed. See that if you move it like this, changing the X or Y position changes it in this perspective, but changing the Z position, so now you can see that the positive values of the Z position of the Z axis will be to the bottom and the negative values will be upward. Let's now set our positions. The gray square will be at +20. The yellow rectangles will be 0, will stay at 0. The green side rectangles will be at -70. The purple circle will be at -50. The yellow squares will be at -70 as well. The gray squares will be at -90. The Z-axis position of the green circle will be at -110, which will be the same for these two. -110. These three layers will be dealt with as the same layer, so we'll deal with that later. The yellow outline circle will be at -150, and the purple circle will be at -160. You can see that the position of this layer was a little bit messed up, so we will go to the scale property, uncheck the constraint proportion and make it go to the middle. Make each rectangle go to the middle of the one under it. Now let's go to the camera. Let's see from a different perspective. Let's press C to select the camera tool and see what we did. You can see now that our layers are positioned correctly, except that they are not 3D. They are still 2D. What we need to do is open each layer, go to geometry options, which will not appear if you're on the classic 3D renderer. Open geometry options, and we are going to change these depths. First thing we're going to do before we change the extrusion depth is select all layers and set the bevel style to convex. This will give a smooth edge to our 3D shapes. Let's set this to 3 pixels. This was changed. This was not changed for all layers. Yep, that's right. Now they have a little bit of depth to them. Now it's time to change the extrusion depth. For the gray square, the extrusion depth will be 30. Now you see that the layer actually is 3D. See that the extrusion depth goes to the positive direction of the Z position. Let's keep it at 30. The extrusion depth of the side yellow rectangles will be 50. The green rectangles will have an extrusion depth of 40. Again, the purple circle will have a 40 pixel extrusion depth. The yellow squares will have a 20 pixel. Again, 40. This will also be 20. And also 20. This is the same layer that we talked about. The yellow outline circle will have an extrusion depth of 30, and the final purple circle will have an extrusion depth of 50. Now that our 3D shapes are ready, I can explain why I chose these exact numbers. So let's have an example of our purple circle. Our purple circle has an extrusion depth of 40 and it has a position of -50. So to make the yellow outline squares be exactly on top of, let's close up, be exactly on top of the purple circle, we need to do the following calculation. The extrusion depth of the yellow squares is 20 and the position of the layer under them is -50. So the position of the yellow squares will be minus 50 minus 20, so it will be -70. I hope this makes sense. You will need to sketch it somewhere or have a better understanding by using your own calculations and your own testing. You will need to try it out multiple times until you get the hang of it. Of course, this is not the design that we want. We want this to have some sort of 3D appearance to it. It's 3D, but it doesn't appear to be 3D. So what we need to do is add lighting. To add lighting, we're going to right click on an empty area, go to New and Light. Your light settings can be customized as you like. You can change these later, but the basic stuff is that our first light will have an intensity of 130. It will be our main light. I will explain why we will need two lights. The cone angle will be 52 and the cone feather will stay at 50%. It will cast shadows and the shadow darkness will be 50% and the shadow diffusion will be 70. I will explain all these properties in a minute. Let's name this light 1. Now it has more like a real look to it. The default position of your light might not appear this way. So what you need to do is go to the default perspective of the camera, click on the click your V key to go to the selection tool, and what you need to change is the point of interest and the position of this light. The point of interest is this one right on the anchor point. It sets where the light is going. So you can see from the camera tool, you can see it like this from a different angle. See where the light goes. Let's go to the default perspective. We will set the point of interest right in the middle, and the position of the light. To change that, the mouse shouldn't have these letters next to it, X or Y or Z. The mouse pointer should have a regular pointer. Now you can actually change the position of the light. You can see what change what this change does. It doesn't change the point of interest, it changed the direction of which the light is coming and the depth of the light and so on. So what we need to do is also make the position near the center. Like this. We can go to light options. Let's have this perspective and increase the cone angle. See what it does to create. The cone angle does this. Let's keep it at 52. The cone feather makes the light have more solid borders. 50 is the best option, I think, for this purpose. And shadows we will deal with later. Now, you can see that the other side, the depth of each layer appears to be black. Now we don't want this to happen. We want to still have our colors. So this is why we need a second light. We will go to New, Light, and name it Light 2. This light will have an intensity of 80%, a cone angle of 52, and a cone feather of 50%. Same thing. And this will not cast shadows. We will also explain this in a minute. Now we need to change the position of this light. So let's get a better perspective. This light will be from the side. Let's actually make it this way and make it like this. A little bit away and let's see what we have. Oh no. See, the intensity, the point of interest is now under our shapes. We don't want that. We want it to be right on the side. This will do. Let's actually make this one a little bit further away from the shape to give it more lighting. Now we have our 3D shape. The last step that we need is to go to our solid layer and turn it into a 3D layer. This will mess up its positions, so we will need to set the Z-axis position of the background layer into, let's say, 300. Now it's actually away from the main 3D shapes. Let's go to the scale and scale it up so it spans all over the composition. This is okay, but what's missing is shadows. Shadows give a more real look to our 3D model. So what we need to do is make this gray square and some other shapes cast shadows on the layers under them. So we go to the layer, go to material options and make cast shadows, make it on. Now layers have shadows on the solid layer. Let's do this to the yellow side rectangles, to the side green rectangles, and to the purple circle, because the purple circle is a little bit above the gray square, so we want it to have a shadow on it. There. We also want the green circle to have a shadow, and the connecting lines and these. The yellow outline circle will also have shadows, will also cast shadows, and the purple circle as well. Our 3D design is now ready to be animated. This will be the subject of our next part of this 3-part tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified as soon as the last part of this tutorial is out.